Hello friends, welcome Salo Happy Home. I'm happy to be here with you today. I'm starting out this video in my laundry room and I'll explain to you in a minute why. So that's my washer and that's my dryer. They're front load LGs with all the bells and whistles. And we're gonna have a conversation about these today. So I bring up washers and dryers because I wanted to talk about something. One of my favorite YouTubers is a gorgeous raven-haired beauty from Kansas named Lindy Glenn. Look her up. She has several channels. She's a business owner, a wife, a mother. She's just a really all-around hilarious, well-informed human. I just love her. And she was doing a consumer video, where she was showing clips of individuals who are complaining about the crap appliances that we have today and the quality of things and how it has declined over the last 50, 60, 70 years. And they're absolutely right. They're not made, appliances in particular, TVs, cell phones, these things are not made to last forever because we are titans of manufacture, and so many of our American brothers and sisters rely on manufacturing as their livelihood. So if people don't buy stuff, there's no need to manufacture. Businesses shut down and people are out of work. So there's really kind of a vicious cycle going on that is really unavoidable, because not everybody can farm, not everybody can work in medicine, not everybody can be a lawyer. We got to have manufacturing jobs for the majority of the people in our nation. They have a right to make a living. But one of the specific things that they brought up was washers and dryers. And there was one woman in particular, excuse me, that was talking about washers and dryers. And I realized that she doesn't understand her washer and dryer. Not understand as in train yourself technically on how to use the washer and dryer, but she's like many people in her generation and the generations before her and after her, that they just don't know what they're freaking doing. During the video, she's sitting in her living room and she's going, "Do you hear that? Do you hear that?" "Well, yeah, I hear your washer. It's on spin cycle." Washers are usually in rooms that have zero sound control, no sound absorbent anything anywhere. They're also on hard floors, tile floors, etc. And because the action of spinning can pop it out of balance, it's got to be solid to the floor. So you got to, jiggle it, make sure it's solid to the floor, especially when you're going to do a heavy load. She was complaining that it was going out when it was just going through a simple spin cycle. Absolutely nothing out of the ordinary with the spin cycle. But she was complaining, and her complaint was, and I quote, "Well, my clothes smell clean, but not as clean as they can." Well, she's blaming the washer for that. Well, why don't you try blaming your laundry detergent? Why don't you try doing a washing machine cleaning? They have these cheap little packs for a couple of bucks of washing machine cleaner. You get the same thing for your garbage disposal in your sink and for your dishwasher. It's a little packet. You toss it into that appliance and it goes through a sanitary cleanse cycle. It delimes it. It cleans out any smelly gunk. Because if you noticed on your washer, there's a little compartment toward the bottom and it has a little knob in there, and if you turn that knob, all kinds of nasty, rotty, icky, gunky water comes out. That has to be drained periodically, because that can back up. That is old water, dirty water that gets collected into this catch, and it can start to smell after a while, and that's going to back up into your clothes. So washers and dryers do need the owner to actually take the effort to understand that you need to drain that every now and then. You also have to, now and then clean it. And the biggest complaint that she had, aside from those two complaints that are actually completely resolvable, is that she didn't understand. She wanted her agitator back. Well, the reason agitators aren't in top load washers really anymore. And if you remember back in the old days when they had laundromats, when laundromats first came into existence, which is, very, very long time ago, they had front load washers that didn't have agitators either. And unless you've lived a life where you've had to take advantage of laundromats, you probably don't know that. The thing with agitators, and the reason that agitators are no longer in washing machines, is for energy savings. If you're environmentally conscious, the agitator takes up a lot of room, and you can put more clothing in the washer, and more clothing in one load means less loads, less energy, less water being used to wash your clothes. Also, the clothing was getting damaged because it was getting sucked in underneath the agitator plate as the agitator was moving around, and it would wrap around that little gear in there, and it could blow out your motor. It could cause a fire. It will destroy your clothes. That agitator, you think it's making your clothes clean. All that it's doing is ripping and tearing your clothes and stretching them. The agitatorless washers, they actually do clean better, even though you don't want to believe it. That agitator is actually very destructive, and you're going to go through clothing much quicker. Your clothing is going to wear out much faster using an agitator washer as one that doesn't have one. And those, the free tubs, I call them, they're agitatorless washers. They, the misinformation that they're not cleaning your clothes is absolutely incorrect. Those move at a very high velocity of centrifugal force. They also go like this, like this, like this. They move in multi directions, I think like 4 different directions. So they're really, really scrubbing those clothes. And because that agitator is not taking up space and it's not interfering, it's not just spinning the clothes on the outside. So the pants are going like this around the agitator and they're just going like this. It's going and flowing all the way through the garment. And all those bells and whistles, I know a lot of people don't like those. They're not comfortable with that, but there's a reason for that. When the old washers and dryers came out, your moms and your grandmas, they had high, medium, low on the dryer and cold, warm, and hot on the washer. Because when we started putting washers and dryers in homes, and they just became a natural thing that everybody had, we were literally dealing with very limited amounts of fabrics. We had cotton, linen, wool. I think there was some rayon at that point. I'm talking 50s, 60s, 70s. Now you move into the 2000s and now the 2020s, and we have cotton, linen, wool, rayon, nylon, polyester, acetate, hemp, bamboo, Tommy copper, which makes a lot of clothing and a lot of athletic and joint support items that are made of materials. They infuse them with copper threads. We have a lot of things that are embroidered now, laser cut, where your lace is actually laser cut and different things. And so those dials and all of those, what seems complicated for some people, it's necessary, because we have moved from a situation where those washers and dryers in the old days were intended for cotton, wool, linen, maybe. But majority of what you still had to go to the dry cleaners because those washers weren't suitable for those natural fabrics. And as we came into, the 70s, polyester was a big craze and so on. Now we've got all of these blends and all of these complicated artificial textiles that are being used for our clothes. And they can't be washed on a simply cold, warm, hot, high, medium, low. They have to have specific temperatures, specific wash times. And agitatorless washers are designed to wash those clothes effectively without tearing them apart. Dryers, the same thing. Of course, dryers don't have agitators, but they have a lot of new temperature controls because it's necessary, because you can't take something that's made of a polymer or a plastic, which is acetate, rayon, nylon, polyester, and throw it in a dryer on an extremely high heat and expect it to not shrink or bend or shred or whatever. You wouldn't put it on the same thing as you would a cotton t-shirt. So to preserve your clothes, because clothes are expensive, and we have a lot of specialty clothing, a lot of things that are embroidered or have blingy embellishments, crystals and stuff like that, and you want to be able to wash those things at will, because you want to be able to wear them freely, and you don't want to have to take them to a dry cleaner and pay for that when you have a perfectly good washer and dryer. But you need to know how to you need to understand that your washer and dryer are designed so that you don't have to go to a dry cleaner, that you can do this at home if you just read the instructions and understand why your washer and dryer are built the way that they are. And like all appliances, you have to take care of them. And people are so rough on stuff. One of the women was complaining that she had a fridge for 3 years and it broke down, when her grandma's had the same fridge since the 90s. I get that. I do. But those old refrigerators from the 90s, they still run like a champ, but they're not energy efficient. So if you are environmentally conscious, those things are sucking up egregious amounts of energy, and they're not cooling and preserving your food the way that a more modern one would, because you can't just go from cold to frozen. Again, it's the basic settings. Now, do we need ones with television screens and Bluetooth and have a fridge that's going to say, hey, you need milk? No, we absolutely don't need that bullshit. But while she was in her kitchen ranting about her fridge, a teenager walked by. And of course, if you have children in your home, teenagers, many different people in and out of that fridge throughout the day. We lived with a young man who was horrible on stuff. He would pull the door open really hard and he'd slam the door back. And it was just because he had this physical strength and he wasn't mindful of what he was doing. You have to be mindful and conscientious. And if you've got kids running in and out all day long, opening and closing those doors and slamming them in different things, you're going to shake things loose. You're going to, have issues with stuff. And it was an LG, and another one was a Samsung. And I get that LG and Samsung make a lot of shitty products. We know that they do. They mass produce products that are designed to last a couple of years, and then you need to purchase them again. Our original refrigerator here was an LG, and it crapped out on us. It was installed in this house in 2023. And it crapped out in 2024. And we pulled up the manual and stuff on it and looked at the stickers and discovered that it was actually from 2019, but that they had bought it secondhand or whatever and put it in the house in 2023. And then we bought the house in 24. So 2019 to 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. So it was like pushing 5-6 years old when it went out on us. That's not acceptable either. We got to have appliances that will do a minimum of 15 years, especially because there are so many paycheck people here. And when they're trying to figure out how we're going to pay our bills, buy groceries, and put gas in the car, the last thing we need to do is get credit at Home Depot or whatever you need to do to get a refrigerator. And LG and Samsung, of course, they're not American companies as far as I know. They're from China, and we get a lot of crap from China. You know that. So if you buy a TV, or any large appliance, and you put cost first, you're going to buy a cheaper one, which will be Samsung, LG, etc. We replaced ours with a very high-end GE. GE is General Electric. It is one of the oldest, next to Whirlpool, Kenmore. These very old electrical companies that started out in the 1800s as telephone companies and electric companies and different things. And then they evolved into appliance companies. So do your research before you buy them. And if you can afford to go a little, one tier up even, and understand that you are responsible for making sure that the appliances are being used correctly and that you're operating them at their optimum ability. It's not enough to be a grown-up and just throw clothes in and put it on hot, medium, hot, warm, cold, or whatever, and expect that your clothes are going to come out looking like brand new. It's not going to happen. And you have to be the grown-up in the room. And you have to step back and realize that your washer, when it's spinning on a spin cycle in a room that has no acoustics on a tile, laminate, stone floor, you're going to hear that vibration because it's a big metal box full of water. Physics will tell you that. Also, if your clothes are smelling clean, but not as clean as you like, you can't just automatically blame the washer. Maybe you need to look at your detergent. Maybe you need to wash your clothes on a different cycle. Maybe if you're washing them on ice cold water, maybe that's not what you do for clothes with a lot of odor in them. Maybe you need to put it on warm or hot. Maybe you need to, review the manual that came with your washer. Maybe you need to understand how washers operate. Look up the good and the bad about agitators and understand why agitators are not there. It's actually to benefit you because you're not going to have to replace your clothes as often. The clothes are going to last longer. They're going to continue fitting better. They're energy efficient appliances. But if you let your teenagers open and slam and pull doors open hard and slam them, you're gonna wear that thing out much faster. So appliances have to be maintained. You have to do frequent updates. If you don't want all of those fancy computer bell and whistles, then buy a basic model. But even the basic models that you're going to find now, they're going to have meaningful technology in them to help, because they're supposed to be preserving your clothes as well as cleaning your clothes. So you kind of got to get your head out of your ass about some things. And agitators, they're really awful for your clothes. I had my first washer without an agitator in the house we bought in 2017 and moved out of in 24. And I'll never, ever have one with an agitator again. Because I did my research. I looked it up and I understand why they took agitators out, the good and the bad and the otherwise of agitators. And I realized that it made more sense to have one that didn't have an agitator. Also, again, front load washers, they don't have agitators. They never did. And when you look back at the history of laundromats, they used front load washers that didn't have agitators. So it's not new. It's not a new concept. You're just a new human or limited ability to understand the technology that you're dealing with. So when you're going to buy appliances, you do your research, not just best value for your money, but what brands are consistently not returned, not reported. You have to look at those warranties. Of course, warranties are scams. They're all scams to suck you in. If a salesperson is trying to sell you something because it has a great warranty, you need to turn around and walk away and go somewhere else, because you want to buy something for the value, for the quality, for its longevity, and not get so preoccupied with these silly warranties that are completely and utterly useless. So if you can only afford a cheap Samsung or LG, and you know that's all that you're going to be able to afford, and you have to make it last, be sure that you and your family are not abusing it. Be sure that you are taking care of that washer and dryer, that make sure that your kids aren't slamming those doors on the fridge so hard or hanging on the doors, because when those doors start to get beat up, it doesn't refrigerate correctly. And if it has ice makers, computer boards, all that nonsense in there, they're going to start to malfunction. So if your family is abusing those appliances, you can't blame the appliances. You have to blame your careless family and teach your children correctly how to open and close a door on a fridge. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but trust me, the damage and the wear and tear throughout the entire refrigerator that can take place when you let your kids swing on them like George of the Jungle, or push them open further than they're capable of doing, or slamming them shut so that the whole thing is moving like this, of course it's going to break. Make sure that the outlet you have it in is the correct wattage. Make sure that it's in that correctly. Make sure that your refrigerator isn't slammed too far up against the wall. You know your refrigerator has to have X amount of space between the wall and the back of the fridge. And if you have it pushed back too far because your fridge is too big and your kitchen's too small, whatever you've done, you have to make sure you get the right size. If it's pushed up too far, that prevents it from circulating correctly. It prevents it from operating correctly, and it's going to blow your frickin' motors out. Your condensers are going to crash. So what I learned from the video that Lindy Glenn put out was people are legitimately fed up with crap appliances. And their money, they're being they're bleeding money over these ridiculously cheap and horrible appliances. And I get that. But you have to take accountability, and you have to look at the factors involved. You, for whatever your reason was, you got a really cheap one. You couldn't afford a better one. I get that. Affordability is the number one. You can't fault anybody for that. But look at how you're operating these appliances. Look at what your kids and your family are doing, because you can't just expect these appliances to be indestructible. And the lady where the teenager walked behind her, she'd had that fridge for 3 years. That's unacceptable that the fridge crapped out in 3 years. But was that refrigerator designed to be in a house with responsible people, or was it designed super heavy duty for people with children and all that other crap? So there's more factors involved than just the quality of the appliances. And I'm grateful that my appliances still work. I have an LG, well, my stove is LG. I've had zero problems with it, knock on wood. My washer dryer are LG. But my microwave and my dishwasher are Whirlpool. And my new refrigerator, which we got less than a year ago, is a GE. Now, we've had a couple of issues with the dishwasher. But instead of getting mad and saying, cheap crap dishwasher, blah, 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 because it's a Whirlpool, so it's not cheap, it's an upper tier, we did a cleaning. We did the deliming cleaning cycle, and we cleaned out the jets. We took a brush and stuff and cleaned the holes out of the jets to be sure that they were operating correctly. And we changed our behavior, and we looked up what we were doing wrong. Part of the reason that it wasn't cleaning the dishes is it had gotten inadvertently clicked onto a cycle that wasn't working for the dishes that we had. And I didn't realize that because I have everything preset the way I want it, so I just have to click the one on button and it comes on. And I didn't realize that, when you're cleaning things, cleaning the faces of stuff, sometimes you hit buttons. So it was just out of whack. And now it works just fine. We looked up the manual, we followed the instructions, we did the cleaning, and now it works like a champ. And I know for many, many people, their first thought is, well, it's not cleaning the dishes, so I got to get a new one. So a lot of times people are unnecessarily replacing appliances because they don't have the brain capacity to understand that you need to step back, pull up the manual and go, okay, so maybe the jets need to be cleaned. Maybe it needs a different setting. Maybe I need to put a cleaner in there and clean it out. Maybe I need to try a different detergent in my washer. Maybe I need to clean my washer. So you got to factor in all of these common sense things, because appliances are like cars. They need to be maintained and they need to be cared for. And if they don't, they're going to, eventually crap out much sooner than they should, because we're not taking care of them. So look at your washer and dryer a little differently now, and understand that there's a reason why there's no agitator, a really good reason. There's a reason why there's all those settings. It's not because they're trying to overcharge you. They're trying to give you all of the options possible for all of the types of textiles. You're not washing shirts and pants. You're washing cotton, linen, polyester, wool, rayon, acetate, bamboo, hemp, copper, linen. Washers and dryers are designed for textiles, not an item of clothing, but the textiles in which it is made. So do your homework. Take care of your appliances. Keep them clean. Use them the way they're intended to be used. Don't abuse them. And you might get a little more time out of them than you are. Now, ours, the fridge, the condenser went out or something, and the condenser was so egregiously expensive that it wasn't worth, replacing it or waiting for it. And we don't know how the previous family, treated their refrigerator. So, we have no history with the fridge to make a educated guess as to why it crapped out, after 5.5, 6 years. But we're hoping, that the GE, it was a higher tier, paid a little more for it. But we trust GE because we're older than a lot of people out there on YouTube, and we understand GE, Whirlpool, Kenmore, the big ones that have been around since our grandparents were buying appliances. So do your homework first. Understand that you have to take care of and respect those appliances, because if you beat the shit out of them, they're just gonna crap out. And until next time, do good and be good.